day, but we have had such an interesting set of speakers. It is a personal delight to be attending these all the way from Singapore. Hello, everyone. My name is Jas Malani. I am an executive leadership coach. I'm based in Singapore. I work mainly with high potential leaders because of my past being working with the World Bank, which is a United Nations organization. I tend to work, be signed up with bankers for some reason. So that's my area of specialty. I am currently also on the Council of Ambassador for the ICF Foundation, which is a passion that I've had for several years to create coaching for social impact. And any such events excite me because I get to meet my tribe. So thank you very much, guys, for giving me this opportunity to be here. So our next speaker, thank you. Okay, our next speaker is a very, very enthusiastic and interesting woman to share this topic with. In my short interaction with her, I already see that she is a person who wants to live forward. She has so much passion in her life that she wants to take it forward and help another person to make best out of their life, which is why she started an organization called Take the Next Step. And she works equally with the leadership teams in developing their competencies as much as when she would be working with a friend to have a coffee. Now, her range of experience is coming from academic, athletic, nonprofit sector. She has been in corporate environments. And because she has such a wide range of experience, what she brings with her is it helps organizations, entrepreneurs, leaders, business owners to transform their leadership essentials, and mainly communication, personal development, team development, and interpersonal skills. So Jane, she is very well known from her friend circle to have a coffee and a virtual Zoom chat. And I am also one of those that she has already set up a call in the first week of July so that we can get to share more of our experiences when we both have been on the exco of our chapters as chapter leaders. Jane's favorite quote is by John Mason. "You are born original. Don't die a copy." Thank you, Jane. If you want to know more about her, you can visit janebishop.live. And our topic for her today is UPLEVEL Your Connection Factor. So I leave this in your good hands, Jane. Over to you.
Thank you, Jess, and hello, everyone. I think we probably need to take a deep breath from that great session with Kirsten, and if she were still online, she would understand how well she has kind of set the stage for some more conversation, even to the point of using the metaphor of the art gallery. So that will come in later. It's already on my notes. So we were thinking alike in several areas. But this has been a very enriched summit. Kai, thank you for the opportunity to be involved with such an esteemed group of leaders and coaches, and for all that you are doing to make this happen. I'm very grateful for that. There has been, as you said, Jess, a variety of speakers this week. There have been different perspectives offered. There have been a variety of methods offered. And we all know as adults, there's going to hopefully be something along the journey that connects with everyone, at some point. Not everyone will be responsive to all of the dynamics, but if we look closely enough, there will be one that will, kind of connect with. I know we have almost said this every session, but can we be in agreement to be on mute unless we are engaging and talking. And we can do that by raising the hand or just simply taking off mute. Or if you have your camera on and you want to wave at me and say, I've got a comment, I've got a question, you know, I want this to have a little fun. I don't know what time of the day or evening or night where you are. It's morning where I am. And like Kirsten, I am a morning person. My roommate in college was not a morning person. And several mornings she would get up and she would look at me and she would say, Jane Bishop, I am not ready for you yet this morning. So if you are in the beginning of your day or at the end of your day and not quite ready for this much energy, that's okay. You do what is helpful and what works for you. So I want us to just think for a couple of moments, you know, who's in the room? And I know many of you are not choosing to be on camera. That's fine. I participated during the week and was not in a space where I could have my camera on, but was gladly listening in. But I'm curious, who's in our space today? Are we all coaches? Are we coaches and leaders? Jazz is going to help me watch the chat room so that we hopefully don't miss anything. But let us know, either briefly show yourself on camera and let us know, or give us that word in the chat room. I understand that the overall participants, Kai, have been a combination of coaches and leaders and managers. And obviously some coaches are also leaders and managers in their own. So let us know who's in the room, who's in this virtual Zoom studio this day.
So Jane, shall we ask them to type the word C if they are a coach and an L if they are a leader?
That is a great suggestion, Jess. Thank you. I'm a firm believer in the collective IQ of the group, because I don't know everything, but what I know well, and what I don't know, I try to learn. So the collective IQ of the group is great. So if you're a coach, type C in the chat box. If you're a leader, type L. And if you're both, type C and L. So take a moment. You know, if we are coaches, silence is okay. So in this moment of silence, we can breathe.
Okay, so we have a few responses which are both C and L. More L than C, what I would say. So
yes.
Yeah, we have a mixed bag here.
Good. Love it. Well, let's mix it up even more together as we have this time. So we're going to make some transitions today, and as we are together. And let me just say, I don't know, Jess, if this is your role or if Maha's, but someone keeps wanting to be admitted from the waiting room, and I click admit and they keep showing up. So perhaps I haven't been made a co-host yet. Usually that doesn't show up unless I'm a co-host.
Jane, you go ahead with the presentation. We take care of the back end.
Okay, great. And I'm going to take it that I am a co-host so that I can share my screen in just a couple of moments. But during our time together today, we're going to visit 4 different spaces. Right now, we are in kind of our transition space from the previous wonderful content that we were given and that discussion. So each time we're going to move, kind of as Kirsten took us through the gallery, that was where I was going to use the metaphor as the gallery. When you go to an art gallery or a museum, typically it's housed in different rooms or different spaces. So you have to physically walk from one area to the next. In this virtual Zoom studio, to help us create that today, when we are about to change spaces and go into a different space, I will ask you to make that shift. And I will ask you to do something physical. If you are standing and want to sit down, or if you need to stretch, or if you need to kind of do a little dance, but we want to do something physically with our body when we're about to shift into a different area of learning, because that triggers our brain to create some space for where we're going next. So we have been in this kind of introduction space, transition space. Do we have any questions before we go into our next space on our tour this morning? And let's just check the chat to see. I'm not seeing any other questions. Jess, are you at this point?
Not yet, not
Okay,
yet. So,
very
Jane, your question was to ask everyone to shift in the physical space. So if there's
Yes.
somebody sitting, then they can stand, because most of the cameras are off. I am going to take the liberty to say that, yes, everybody, please do the little bit of
Yeah.
shifting that you need to stretch out. Yeah, and
Yes.
then we are back with you, Jane. We've
Yes.
done what you asked us to
Well,
do.
you see, I think one of the speakers said earlier this week, you know, many of you are off camera because that's what works for you. That's okay. And because we're dealing with this e-world that we're living in and trust, it is a symbol of trust that you are engaging at the level that is going to be helpful for you. Because anytime we participate in any kind of session, our outcome is going to be in direct proportion to how we invest and how much we invest. So we are trusting that those of you that are not visible to us are playing along or coming along with us for the journey. And if you're not, that is your choice, because choice is a powerful life skill, but that's another subject. So now that we've made that physical and we've made that shift, we're going to go into the next space of celebration. What is a win from today or sometime this week, not necessarily related to the summit, but it could be? But what is a win that you can share with us that we can all celebrate together? And if you're open to it, I would ask you to unmute yourself and let us at least hear your voice so that we can celebrate a win with you this week. What is a win that you have experienced that we can join in and celebrate together?
Okay, so guys, here's a question for you. Please put something in the chat, or you can speak on the with us about something which you consider a win.
Now, I often, when I ask that question of people randomly, there is this moment of silence for many different reasons. A, they've never been asked that question before. B, it catches them, that's my point, of their brain thought. And another reason that it might catch them off guard is that they have to think about it. And those of us who are coaches, what a novel idea, getting them to push the envelope of their brain.
I think we are always on the other side as coaches. We ask the question. So I think everybody's taking a pause.
Yes.
But Ruqya, you spoke you were the first speaker. Isn't that a win?
Yes.
Do share with us about it.
You know, thank you. Thank you for remembering, Jess. So Jane, the moment you said what's a win of this week, for me, it's the highlight of the month that I was the first speaker. Guys, thank you so much for having me, giving me that honor. And I think one of my wins was to actually use PowerPoint during the webinar, because I, being the storyteller that I am, I enjoy, you know, just flowing with my content. So for me to actually present a video and some slides, which I might have taken the chance to, was a win for me. And it was a learning, and I felt very safe and excited to share it in this space. And yeah, so that was my win for sure. Thank you.
Awesome.
For asking.
Now, Ray, I have a little toy that I use. So we'll do the clapping of the hands. Yes.
And I'm going to show you my smile.
Okay, good.
If I may jump in.
Kai, I think we lost you for a moment.
Yes, you're back.
You're back.
Yeah,
okay.
so I'm still here. So can I? Yeah. So whenever I think about wins, my connection is unstable. my connection is unstable, so I don't know whether you can hear me.
Your connection is unstable, Kai, but you're not unstable. So there's no correlation there.
Especially my thoughts. Okay, so what I was about to say is whenever I think about that comes to my mind is not my outer achievements. I never think about them as achievements. So wins for me are things that happen inside, and just being myself, that's the win I'd like to celebrate.
Great, awesome, very good, thank you.
Super.
All right, anyone else want to step into the celebration space before we make another shift? Awesome. Well, I would encourage you to use that in your conversations, especially those of you that are leaders. And if you are, whether you're in the physical space or a virtual space, that is a question that you can ask your teammates at any point and any time to begin to introduce a different way that you can connect with them, which maybe will be clearer by the time we finish our session together today. And I would encourage you, if you're out and about, if the COVID restrictions allow you, that is something that you can use when you're talking with people. I will often, when I am in a store checking out at the cashier, I will say, hi, how are you? How's your day? You know, that's kind of the typical traditional question. They'll, most of the time will say good or fine. And then I will say, well, what's good about it? Or what's fine about it? So you have that momentary pause, and I may use the word win or not, but it gets people to reflect and think, what is something that is going right that they can be encouraged by? As leaders, we often don't take the time to do that, especially when we're in a high stress, fast paced, high demand role. So as a leader, those of you if you find yourself in that, it is critical to take time to celebrate. It does not have to be a huge block of time. It can be 30 seconds. It can be 60 seconds. The key is identify a moment to celebrate, embrace that together. And the other thing that does is interrupt, again, our neural pathways that we have created going one direction, and all of a sudden our brain is diverting to another. So it's a way of just kind of, even in that 30 to 60 second time, clearing that space. So I'll ask you to think about this as, why is it important to celebrate? Just kind of put that off on the side. If you want to respond in the chat for an answer, please do so, but why is it important to celebrate? And as you're thinking about that, I would like for you to make another physical shift, because we're about to change spaces from the celebrating phase to the learning phase. Well, hopefully we've already been learning a few things, but the content, the learning phase of our time together, which is about up-leveling your connection factor. I'm curious why you stayed around this morning, why you have showed up again. What is it that you are looking for out of today's session? And I would encourage you, and I see your hand, Kai, I would encourage you to think about, what is your intention? What do you want to have in your place, on your plate, or in your notes, in your resource kit by the time our session ends together, and capture that somehow. Kai, you had your hand raised.
It was just a question about, just a thought. I wanted to get your feedback on it.
Yes.
So what do you make of the idea of someone moving from one achievement to another in that really fast-paced world and competitive environment, and really not enjoying these and celebrating these moments? So what's your thoughts about that?
My thought about that, that's a great question, Kai. My thought about that, both personal thought and my experience, is we lose the value of that achievement when we don't take time to celebrate. And that value of that achievement can serve to be an encouragement. It can serve to remind us that we are making progress and going forward, even when things seem a little bit like we're stuck. I do think it is very important to celebrate because it just stops us just momentarily. And that, I believe, is becoming more critical. And I also believe that more people have discovered that in this COVID-19 era, and being mindful of the value of stopping to celebrate and understand, yes, I did that, not in an egotistical way of let me put myself on a pedestal, but a way of feeling accomplished. It's a great question. And I would ask the group that we have celebration adds a sense to self-worth. Yes. Anyone else want to comment on Kai's question?
So I think until recently, for me, celebrating and pausing to these accomplishments was not a big thing. I would just keep moving forward.
Yes.
Again, coming from what you said about not coming from an egotistical place. So I having that hesitation of, am I speaking from a place of pride or is it pure joy? Once I was able to understand that it's joy that I'm celebrating, even when you asked that question just now, what was your win? I wanted to, but then when you said not the summit, I said, okay, let me just think about this now. Let me think of something else. But that was the only thing that blinked in my head, and coming purely from a place of joy. So yes, it definitely adds to a sense of worth.
Yes. I will just say one other before we move on, unless somebody else really feels like we need to camp here for a moment longer. I do think that stopping to celebrate and capturing that win also is something we have to give ourselves permission to do and give others permission to do, especially if you're in a corporate sector and I was a senior level director at the company that I served with. And so here I was at a senior level with organization-wide responsibilities and yet managing a team. And there were many days that there was a great tension between the two of responding to the up level, so to speak, and yet leading and managing and caring for the team. And it's something that we stopped, and we were intentional about that, but we had to give ourselves permission to do that. So I think permission is key as well. Great question. And that is a great segue into, Kai, thank you very much. Are you sure you weren't looking at my notes? That is a great segue that really, as humans, we really value connection. Now, I have a basketball here with a little smiley face to represent the volleyball named Wilson that was created years ago in the old movie Castaway. Now, if you're not familiar with that movie, Tom Hanks was the actor. He was a pilot on a FedEx cargo plane. It crashed. He landed on an island. He was isolated for, I don't remember how long with the movie. However, there was a volleyball that survived. So he created a face to the volleyball and named it Wilson because that was his connection. And it became so vital to him at one point in the movie when he was trying to, he was on a raft and he was trying to move somewhere else. Wilson got away from him and it was traumatic for him because of the connection. So as human beings, we value and need connection. We also have to be reminded at the very core of who we are as humans, we want to be valued and affirmed. We know that. We know that innately, even when we don't act at it. Think about a time when you were recently valued and affirmed, and think about how did that make you feel? What contributed to that feeling? Who invested in you and who communicated that value and affirmation? And how did they show it? And I would ask you that whatever is showing up, that you capture that, either writing or typing on your device, But think about that and sit with that feeling for just a moment. And then ask yourself, what was the result of that feeling? What was the result of being valued and being affirmed, you know, in who you are, especially when it is unexpected. And especially when it comes at a time maybe when you needed to be reminded that you were valued. Did it give you more confidence in that moment? Did it give you more encouragement to go forward? Now, I would also ask you to contrast that for a moment. Think about a time when you did not feel valued and affirmed. And what feelings begin to surface about that? Now, those of us who are practicing coaches, we are sensing that, and we are looking intuitively for that sometimes in our clients. Those of you who are in the leader space, I would invite you to consider how you are leading your team. Are you extending value to them? Are you extending affirmation? Not simply in lip service, but how is that showing up? And when you do that with your team, what difference? And then if we take that one step further and ask, how does that impact the trust factor? If I feel valued and affirmed by you, I'm going to open up my trust factor with you just a little bit more. And this whole trust factor is really at the basis of how we have a greater influence on others, which I believe is a simple definition of leadership. It is also how we invite and encourage and facilitate team engagement. And if you're, I know, I'm sure all of you are reading, the team engagement is in the top 3 or 5, depending on what studies you're reading, missing link in teams today. And then you add to that we have all been working remotely for so long. How do we make the transition to begin to engage at a different level when either we return in person or we return to a hybrid or we stay remote? Now, that's a whole bundle of questions, perhaps for another conversation, but I don't want you to miss those as we're thinking about in our sphere of influence, how that shows up. George Bernard Shaw has said that the biggest problem in communication is the assumption that it has taken place. Now, there is a ton of communication that goes on, be it verbal, be it written, be it nonverbal. There's all kinds of communication. However, it doesn't automatically translate into connection. I am communicating words and ideas and thoughts to you today. It may or may not be connecting. And part of that may be on me, part of that may be on you. You know, it's a joint collaborative effort. So do we find that? How do we find that in the space where we live in our sphere of influence, be it verbally, be in person, be it a hybrid? So I'm just curious for a moment if you would share what is surfacing in your brain about communication does not always translate into connection. Do you experience that? If so, how? And that would be where you can unmute yourself and speak. Love to hear your voice, or you can use the chat box. We have both. See, we have a hybrid way of communicating. We have the chat and we have verbal.
Jane, please, I didn't get the question.
What are your thoughts on communication not automatically translating into a connection? We can voice words, we can show up and communicate, and especially if we're leading a team, offload information, it may or may not create a connection.
I may share my thoughts if you want, Jane.
Please.
For me, there are 4 levels of communication. The first one is the practical level. It's about action. And allow me to say this. So sometimes we don't need that high level of connection. Just so now, in the fire of action, we need to do something. Just do. So it's about information.
I agree. I'm not sure if we're.
Yeah, so sorry for my unstable connection. Yeah. So the second level is about the emotional communication. So here we can really go deep and get connected in motion. So it's about really empathy and all that active listening. The third level is about so we're moving a little bit higher. It's about really cognitive aspects. So it's not just about emotions. It's about really ideas, critical thinking. It's about exploring. It's really not in a judgmental way. It's coming from curiosity perspective, a sense of curiosity. So that's another element. Listening while trying to understanding and trying to really understand where your vis-a-vis is coming from and what's really his challenges, his thoughts and all of that stuff. But there is, for me, the deepest level of communication is this. So when you sit just beside someone else, just both of you silent and not really physically, verbally communicating, and still you can feel something coming from that person. Still, you're really getting something different. So that's really another type of communication. I call it this way. I don't know whether people believe in faith or not, in soul or not. So it's that type of soul's connection. You just there, you feel in peace, and that's you get some messages, and you don't know how you are getting these messages, but still they are carrying some kind of meaning.
Yes. And Kai, that is an excellent description of identifying that we connect with people at different levels. And it is based on how we communicate, at some point. But that connection level, you're absolutely right. Think of it as you are also meeting someone. If it's someone that you're going to end up getting to that fourth stage of connection and communication, like you just described, it has to start at the basic, and it has to start with creating a framework where both parties are willing to extend trust to each other. And that's where I think sometimes as leaders and coaches, we forget that simply because we are willing to extend trust to someone and make a deposit in their trust bank, they are not necessarily automatically willing to reciprocate. So how do we, if interested and necessary, create that initial connection so that we can up-level the connection to get to that fourth level, if that's where that relationship goes. So thank you for that. Awesome. One other thing I want to say about connection is just as a reminder that, we are bombarded with messages every day. Several years ago, there was research done that said we were we were given 35,000 messages a day, 16,000 words a day, 50,000 thoughts a day. And they were doing that research to illustrate that talk is cheap. Now, as Kirsten said in her presentation, all of the thoughts that are going on in the storytelling, they're replays from the day before, which are replays from the day before that, which are replays from the day before that. So hence the illustration of talk is cheap. But John Maxwell reminds us that when we connect with others, we are actually positioning ourselves to make the most of our skills and talents. And as coaches and leaders, personally, that's where I want to be, because I want to be an influence. I want to help someone be their best self, or be leading and managing a team that's a high-performing team. So as you think about that, I would ask you to just note, how are you connecting with others so that you are in that position to make the most of your skills and talent? Because you know your environment, you know your framework. I don't, you do. So capture any notes at this point. And just a little bit more about the communicating to connect versus connecting. It's important because, again, from John Maxwell, connecting is the ability to identify with people and relate to them. Remember, we were reminded a few minutes ago, at the basic human nature, we all want to be valued and affirmed. So when we connect, we are giving that value. We are increasing, again, our influence, with them. And that helps us be successful in helping them. So think about this. How does that impact where you are in your setting, your trust, in your engagement? Just think about that. Ponder that for a moment. And I see we have a couple of raised hands. So we have Kai. So let's see what Dr. Kai has to offer.
If you don't mind, I'll let Jess go first.
Okay.
My question is around using today's scenario where the leaders are working with teams who are working on a remote basis. And what then makes the connection on the digital platform different from what we are talking about so far? Or are there additional tips to managing it on digitalization?
Jess, that's a great question. And may I ask you to let's put that on the parking lot just for a moment, because I think when we highlight the quick 5 skills, I'd like to circle back around and use that question as an example. Let me just say at this point, there are the essentials are the same. How we execute them may change. That's the simple, the summary answer. So let's explore that in just a little bit more in just a few minutes, if we can. Would that work? Would that be okay with you? You're on mute, so I'm just. Is that good with you?
Yes, I will park it on the chat so that we
Okay.
can address it at the later stage. Yeah.
Great. And I see Mauna or Mona. I think names are important. Forgive me if I've mispronounced your name. You have your hand raised.
Yeah, no worries. My name is Mona.
Mona?
Yeah. It's a very important topic. Actually, the first thing I wanted just to add something, or maybe say it differently in a way, maybe to just make sure that I understand correctly, or maybe I can add something. Here, in this case, connecting and communication are communication is serving for a good connection or good connect with people, and connecting might serve for a good communication. At first point, I want to give you small definition for the communication. There is different channels of communications.
Yes.
And the communication is I can define it like a journey of the message that happened between the two interlocutors. there is the problem with communication is that sometimes we think about something, we say something may be different when we say it, when we express ourselves, maybe not perfectly, and always not perfectly. The message to reach the other interlocutor, the other interlocutors might get the message in a different way depending on his background and the situation, and he might even understand it in another way. That's why some linguists or psychologists, they say the communication never happened. In this case, what will help really the communication to happen is the connection. If you are connecting very good with your interlocutor, you can express yourself smoothly. You can the message can get to the other person's maybe, let's say, at 90%, 80%. Let's hope for 100%. So I think in this way, communication is serving connection, and vice versa.
Thank you, Mona. I would agree with you. And I think when we highlight the 5 skills to do that are basic, simple, we all probably are already doing it. I just want to bring our awareness and intention to it. It's exactly as you described. So thank you for sharing. Kai.
Yeah, just to really enrich in this debate, I'd like you to ask you this question, Jane. So have you ever found yourself in a situation trying to connect to someone, trying even harder, and it was not really working? So I don't know whether you've been in such situations and how you dealt with that.
Yes, yes, and yes. I think if we were all up front, if dealing with people in whatever arena, we cross that path. I'll give you 2 quick examples. I mean, very quick. One is in a workshop setting. Years ago, a colleague of mine and I were doing an all-day workshop, and we were experienced facilitators and trainers. We had worked with a different number of groups at different levels. This particular training, we pulled out every technique in both of our toolkits, every technique. Could not get the group engaged. As a full group, this was in person, as a full group, the only time they were engaged is when they were in small groups. At the end of the day, we learned a piece of information that, had we known this going in, it would have helped us, I believe, framed it differently. I don't know that it would have made any difference in the outcome. There was an underlying issue of anger, and the word I'm looking for escapes me, but there was an underlying issue of anger and conflict because there were major changes going on in this organization. And the participants felt like that they were in this one-day training out of force, and that it wasn't going to make any difference anyway, because half of them felt like they were going to be terminated. So how we dealt with that experience, we learned from that and adjusted the information that we would gather before we went into another training session. And on an individual basis, there have been people in my walk of life that I have attempted to connect with, because I'm one of these people. I want to know your story. I'm not curious because I'm trying to get information. I'm curious because I'm curious about you and the person you are. And the fact is, there are just some people, either because of timing or personality or any other set of factors, you're simply not going to connect with. And how I deal with those situations, I simply accept it. I have done my best to extend value and affirmation to them. And if it's not received, then I simply, move on. But as long as I'm being true and aligned to who I am, that's what works for me. So those are just two quick illustrations of that. And one other, just very quick, in a work setting when I was leading a team, what helped me when I felt like I wasn't making connection with those that I was leading, I began to shift how I communicated with them and worked with them so that we were connecting and on the same page, to use that terminology. Does that help?
Perfect. Thank you, Jane.
You're welcome. All right, Jess, do we have any other hands up or questions before we move on? We're not changing spaces, so you don't have to do anything physical unless you want to. We're still in the learning space. Are we good?
So we are good. We don't have any more hands raised or questions in the chat.
Okay, so what I'm going to ask you all to do is to ignite your turbo engines. I want to make two other points about why connection is important in this learning space, and then highlight the 5 skills. They're not anything new, and they're not anything that probably hopefully we're all using in some form or fashion, to kind of package them in this connection factor, so then we can have ample time before our time is up to have additional dialogue. So, as I like to say, strap yourself in, sit up straight, put your fast listening ears on, get ready to ignite that turbo engine within you. So here is a thought for you. Breaking news. What if you invested in return on relationships? That's what ROR stands for. What if you invested in return on relationships and made that a priority? Because here's the thing, the secret sauce of business and life is relationships. Business is still built on relationships. And when we focus on relationships and nurture and connect and build that, then the ROI will be a lot more effective, the return on investment. So as we're thinking about that, what if there were 5 skills that anyone can practice that would empower others? Because real power comes by empowering others. And in empowering others, what if it impacted your leadership? And what if it contributed to your trust factor? And what if it contributed to the engagement with your team? Because when we think about empowering others, we're really giving power or authority to do something. We are encouraging and supporting the ability to do something. Those of us in the coach space, we experience this when our clients discover, or they uncover, or they take ownership for that destination that they're trying to reach. When you're leading in a leadership position, I'm sure you experienced that. I did with my team, when there was that aha, oh, I get to take ownership of this. I get to run this project. I get to, fill in the blank and engage my gifts and skills. Because Lolly Daskell from Leading From Within reminds us that when we empower people, we're not only influencing them, but we are creating a little ripple effect, because we're influencing others that they are leading, and that is empowering. These 5 skills are part of any coach's toolkit. However, you don't have to be a coach to use them. And I would say to my fellow coaches, I invite you, if you're not using them outside a coaching scenario, these are life skills. These are skills that any of us can use. Call it a coach approach to life, if you will, a coach approach to connecting with others. Let me quickly say before I give you the 5 skills, don't underestimate the basic, the value of basic and simple. Sometimes we need to go back to that. So here they are. The first skill is listening. It's one of the most important skills for conversation. We know that. Yet it's often overlooked, underestimated, and misunderstood. And yet it's a gift that we can give anyone. If you are a trained coach, even if you're not, this may be old news to you. I'm reminding us all, listening is different than hearing. Hearing is that auditory process. We do it with our ears. It's the words, it's the details, it's the information, it's what we know about somebody, where you're from, what's your family background, what have you done, what do you like, where do you like to vacation? That's the hearing. However, when we get into the listening approach or the listening mindset, it's intentional. It involves all of our senses. Not only does it include the words, but the deeper meaning, what's being said, what's not being said. And to Kai's point a while ago, in kind of being at that high level of connection, it's being with someone, knowing that that person gets me, you know, knowing that they understand who I am. And the ability to listen actively can improve our personal relationships because it reduces conflict. Just like Kirsten gave the example of her internal conflict, being a morning person, her husband is not, and yet she realized if she would just take him a cup of coffee, you know, their morning would be a lot more pleasant. So it's improving relationships by strengthening cooperation and fostering understanding. I would give you this activity that you can do within your own team at some point. And that's where you pair people up and give them 2 minutes, 1 minute each, and give them a subject, a topic. And they are, one is the listener and one is the speaker. The speaker talks about that topic for 60 seconds, whatever they want to. And do something not related to work if it's in a work setting. Favorite destination point. What book are you reading? What toy did you have growing up? At the end of that 60 seconds, you stop. And then they switch roles. So it's only listening. And then you take about 2 minutes and you debrief. What was the challenge? What was the opportunity? How was that for you? Was it comfortable? Was it uncomfortable? So that's a listening activity that you can do with your team or with a group of people in general. Skill number 2, coaches, you know this, you know what was coming next, I'm sure, asking questions, those powerful questions that come out of listening, the listening with intention. They're open-ended, they're present focused, not past. There's no judgment. You know, a parent and a child comes out of their room dressed and the parent says, "Are you really wearing that?" You know, that's a judgment question. They're action oriented and they're tell me more. There is a resource, if you're not familiar, by James E. Ryan called Wait, What? So if someone needs a good place to start with 5 questions and start beginning to practice just asking questions in general, that is a great resource. His 5 questions are: wait, what? Second question, I wonder, and then complete the sentence. The third question, couldn't we at least complete the sentence? The fourth question, how can I help? And then the 5th question is, what really truly matters here? So that's a resource that I would offer to you if someone is wanting some introduction into questions that may become can come a little bit more naturally. The 3rd skill, clarify. This is so key. And back to your point, even though it's in the parking lot, Jas, this is so key in the digital world that we live in right now. Just think of how we're in this space together. Some are visible on camera, some are not. Clarify has got to be part of your communication and your connection. We meet people from different cultures, from different backgrounds, different languages, and words and phrases that are used in one environment may or may not transfer or translate to another. Clarify, clarify, clarify. And if I didn't say it, clarify. That's the 3rd skill. The 4th skill is brainstorming, or as I like to call it, Jane-storming. And that's where you shift from telling to collaborating. Here is another activity that I will give you that you can use with a group of any size. You create, and I've actually done this in classes that I have taught. You have someone sit in the brainstorming seat or Jane-storming seat, if you're virtual, I put that in quotes, and they give something that they're struggling with to the group. You clarify, make sure everybody understands, and then for 60 seconds, the group bombards them, tosses to them ideas that they have. The person in the Jane-storming seat cannot talk. They listen, they capture words and phrases that might be helpful to jumpstart their ideas, their thinking, to resolve the issue that they're stuck with. And then the fifth skill, skill number 5, is that encouragement skill. We want to offer support. We want to offer encouragement. We want to be their advocate. I have a client now that is amazed, even though we're early in our journey, but it still is affirming to this client that I am an advocate there, for her, as she has come back to me between sessions with some resource help. So encouraging people, being their advocate, that is key. And those of you that are leaders in a team corporate setting, whether it's in person or still virtual or both, here's another digital application. It is clear that when you encourage, you thank someone, or you make a comment, that you are very clear about what you are encouraging them with and for. If it's on a job well done, they may have done 10 projects. Be specific. Be specific and tell them which project, the job well done. All right, let's pause for a moment. We need to do that physical change with our body. So the author's name was James E. Ryan, and the name of the book was Wait, What? So now we're going to kind of shift into our next space, which is our last space for questions, for comments. And we have, I believe, about 5 minutes left. But in this summary phase, I want to remind us 5 skills that any of us can do, and they can be done quickly. We don't have to spend a lot of time. You can listen, you can ask good questions, you can clarify, you can do some Jane-storming, and you can do some encouragement. You have empowered that person, whether it's in 60 seconds, 90 seconds, or much longer. And in this Q&A time, I would invite you to write this question down, or write this statement and then complete it on your own. And if you want to share, you can in the chat. My time today in this space has been valuable so that, and you complete that statement. My time today has been valuable so that, and you complete that statement. And if you want to connect outside this summit, if there's something that I said that generated more conversation that you want to have, always glad to do that. So Jess, we have about, I think 4 minutes left. What questions, comments, what open-ended spaces do we have that we've got to close so that you can be ready for the last session of the summit?
Yeah, interestingly, we have a very intently listening kind of an audience. I think they're absorbing the information that you are sharing with us. So far, no questions.
Okay.
You've given
Yes,
even the name of the
let's go. Yeah, let's go back to the parking lot question that I committed to.
If you don't mind, I'd like to comment.
Yes.
So really, what's interesting about your presentation, I think what you said was powerful, was so deep, but more interesting for me, from my perspective, is the connection you established. So you walk the talk. So we learn from your words, and most importantly, we learn from who you are and the powerful energy you brought to this space. So we're so far connecting from different spaces, virtually, online, and you did it. So you were the proof of what actually we're talking about. So I just wanted to applaud you and
Applaud you.
Thank you. I appreciate the encouragement, Kai. That is one of my personal objectives, is to not only demonstrate, to deliver helpful content, but to give tools that anybody can use anywhere at any time in their setting. Jazz, to your parking lot idea, those 5 skills can be used digitally on any level. As I said, they simply sometimes need to be implemented and executed in a different way. I gave you the example of the Jane storming seat. If we were in a physical space together, we would have done that differently. Had we had time, we could have done that virtually, because I have done that, and set that stage. So digitally, I think the challenge with the digital connection overall is when people are not comfortable being on camera, you have to continue on as if you're seeing everybody's faces and as if you are connecting, engaging, just as you would in a physical space. So those 5 skills easily transfer to the digital world.
That's true. And we have a few responses to the question that you posed us. The Ruqya says, my time today has been valuable so that I can increase the depth of my connection. And Mona has added, my time today has been valuable so that I learned very important connecting skills and the importance of connecting.
Great.
That's great and very encouraging. So is there anyone else who would like to give us a comment? Any insights, takeaways that you have had so far?
Just wanted to second what Kai said about Jane and the fact that she walks her talk quite literally. And it's something that she has developed over years of practicing, and that was very evident in how she presented herself. So thank you, Jane. I truly, truly hear you. Thank you. Great session.
Well, thank you for the opportunity to be in this space, and thank you for those who engaged at whatever level you engaged. My invitation to you is whatever surfaced for you in our time together, write it down and take some action on it so that it does not get lost.
Again, Jane, thank you so much. This was a very interesting topic, especially as leaders, because the ability to connect with your team members, creating the trust factor, is really important for the teams to feel that they are valued, they're cared, they're appreciated. And these 5 skills that you have given us, which are so simple to implement in any scenario, are going to be great reminders that we cannot just assume that communication has taken place, or we cannot even underestimate the value of and the power that you shared of those basic and simple communication deals that we need to be mindful of. And it was very interesting how you shared from your own personal examples, simple techniques, simple ways that we can use our capabilities to connect, not just on a regular basis, but also now using these for the virtual platform and up level our connection moving on. So thank you very much. It's been a pleasure to be here with you.
Thank you for your assistance and for facilitating. I really appreciate that.
Okay, my pleasure. Thank you so much for the opportunity to be